Hello everyone, this is Tengu, back with another Dark Souls 3 boss drawing. The last episode saw us discovering the Untended Graves and facing off against Gundyr for a second time, but this time as Champion Gundyr. With that area explored, there is just one more optional area available to us before we press onward to finish the story. In the room just past Osiros, we picked up a new gesture called Path of the Dragon, and by using it in view of the mountains from Irithyll Dungeon, we are transported to the distant Archdragon Peak. This mountaintop is home to many serpent men who were likely human at one time. Serpents are considered lesser forms of dragons, so it's likely they attempted a transformation but failed. There are more than just serpent men here, however, as it's not long before we face off against the massive and ancient Wyvern that guards the mausoleum of Archdragon Peak. The fight against the ancient Wyvern is very different from anything we've faced off against in this game. The first thing you'll notice when the fight commences is just how little damage you do when attacking its legs. In desperate need of a new strategy, we discover a path to the left that leads through the ruins. Guarded by swarms of serpent men, we fight our way to the top of the ruins, while the Wyvern breathes fire whenever we come into its sights. With nowhere to go but up, we climb up the towers and scaffolding until we are directly above the boss. Leaping off, we plunge downward and perform a lethal attack that ends the Wyvern in one blow. There's a lot to love about this fight, but there are also a lot of ways I think this fight could have been improved. I know a lot of people really don't like the more gimmicky fights in the Souls games, but I don't mind them every once in a while. I think having another boss here in this area goes a long way to letting it feel not so much like a letdown. I like the idea of a more cinematic fight, and I think this one worked out better than fights like the Dragon God from Demon Souls did. My biggest gripe with this boss is that there really needed to be a better sense of the Wyvern chasing you through the ruins. Instead, the boss here really is the large amount of serpent men, as they are the real threat in the fight. I have a feeling that the developers had better intentions, but it just came down to time and deciding how much effort they wanted to put into what's little more than a mini-boss in an optional area of the game that many players won't even discover. As I'm working on this, you'll notice I use a stone texture brush quite a few times throughout the drawing, particularly on the ancient Wyvern. This really helps me capture the stone-like texture of the Wyvern's skin, but also adds some grit to the drawing. I could draw the cracks individually, but it would take a lot longer, and it would also give the boss a much smoother finish that I didn't want. You'll notice I even used the stone texture on our character's armor. The armor clearly isn't made of stone, but by doing some blending on top of it, I can create a worn look to the armor that fits quite nicely. I even use a small brick brush to add some texture to the chainmail in the armor. For those interested, I highly recommend experimenting with a lot of different texture brushes and see what effects you can create. You can save yourself a lot of time and create something pretty cool in the process. Due to popular demand, I went with the Wolf Knight armor for this fight. It once belonged to the knight Artorius the Abyss Walker. You can purchase this armor in the Untended Graves, and since it's sort of the last armor we would have likely received before the fight, it seemed fitting. As cool as it would have been to use Ornstein's armor, it unfortunately isn't available to us at this point. But even though Ornstein is the Knight of Gwyn who was best known for his dragon-slaying abilities, I would imagine that Artorius would have done his fair share of dragon slaying as well. Overall, I'm really happy with the set we went with. When the ancient Wyvern falls, we are transported to the Dragonkin Mausoleum, where our journey through Archdragon Peak will continue. Our goal now is to take the Path of Dragons to uncover the power of dragon transformation and to seek out the next boss in the area, the Lord of Storms and the Nameless King. If you have any suggestions on what armor or weapons you would like to see used in the fight, please let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like to help support this series, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.